wanted to see what you thought about the way Jalen Hunt played.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed him. It's funny. He played a lot of snaps. I wouldn't say that I noticed him in the way that you're talking, Frank. But I mean, there was one rush I really remember where he got the edge and showed bend and flexibility and burst to the quarterback. I think he's played well. I've talked about him quite a bit that I think he's going to be a really, really good player. I actually thought that the two guys that really stood out to me on the D line, I thought Milton Williams was a dominant force, and I think he's a terrific player. And I'm very curious to see if they can re-sign him because I know they got a lot of guys to deal with. And even though he only played 13 snaps, I thought Jordan Davis had his best game of the season. He had some really, really good snaps. So I thought he played really, really well. In this game, Carter lined up 6 times at defensive right tackle. It was the most snaps he's played at defensive right tackle in any game this year. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the Super Bowl. Number one, it'll be interesting to see if Trey Smith, the right guard for the Chiefs, who many believes a top 2 or 3 guard in the league, if they let him block Carter one-on-one, that to me, that's going to be one of the interesting elements of the Super Bowl to see how that plays out.
Jalen is audible in 2 different plays. And when he does that, more times than not, it's a huge play or a touchdown. Is that normal?
Couple of things. First of all, you don't know what a quarterback is saying. When you say it's an audible, it could be. He could just be asking for emotion. You don't know what he's saying. And number two, if they're in no huddle, more than likely what he's getting the play from the offensive coordinator. So he's not necessarily changing the play. He's telling everybody the play. Now, I'm sure he does change plays. All quarterbacks will change plays. All quarterbacks have the ability to do that. It happens a lot, by the way, in the run game because teams never want to run to the strength of a defensive front. So let's say they have a run call to the right, and that's where the strength of the defensive front is. They might simply just change the exact same play and run it to the left. But I will say this. I think Jalen does a really good job in the no huddle, because they run it a ton and it is successful.
I thought Oren Burks had a fabulous
He
game.
did.
What stuck out for you?
He was playing so much faster and so much quicker, which leads me to believe that he's seeing things quicker because he's a really good athlete, Travis. I mean, you're dealing with a guy that's 6'3", 230. He was a safety at Vanderbilt for a good amount. I mean, he's a really athletic player with a lot of length and a lot of good movement skills, and he just looked so much quicker in this game. His reaction time was quicker.
My question is, I wanted you to speak to the physicality of this football team.
I think that that's a foundation of who they are. And to be honest with you, I think it starts not being in the building every day, but I think it starts, Malik, with their O-line. I mean, they have got a big time O-line. It's big, it's physical, it's powerful, it dominates in the run game. I mean, we were joking last week. You got Mailata, who's probably 360, 370. You got Becton, he's probably 350. You got Dickerson, what is he, 345?
Oh, he's way more than that. Way more than that.
There you go. And Lane Johnson, what is he, 330? I mean, Cam Jurgens looks like a ninth grader compared to these guys. But it is such a big physical offensive line. It dominates. I mean, just think about it, Malik. So you're the Washington Commanders. You come out, you go 18 plays, more than 7 minutes. Okay. Now you want a touchdown, obviously, but you put up 3 and you're probably feeling pretty good. You converted a bunch of 4th downs. The game feels like, hey, we're getting off to a really good start. And bam, 1 play and you're losing. Okay. I mean, that changes. Obviously there's a lot of game to go, but that changes the whole feel of the game. In many ways, the Eagles have been antithetical to what the league tells you have to be, and the way the game has been talked about and played, that everything has to be the pass game. All offensive coaches talk about the pass game as being how you get explosive plays, because percentage-wise, that's true. But in the Eagles' case, it's not. It's the opposite. Their explosive plays come out of the run game, and they get them. It's not like they're 3 yards in a cloud of dust here. They're getting explosive plays in the run game.
Was there anything that you saw from their offense in terms of no huddle that surprised you in terms of kind of like neutralizing the Eagles pass rush?
Huddle, I think the Eagles were ready for it. the Eagles, they pretty much rushed 4 of the whole game. They only rushed 5 on 7 of Daniel's 55 dropbacks. It was clear that their game plan foundation versus pass was coverage with a good mix. They played a good amount of single high, predominantly cover 1, some cover 3. When they played cover 1, sometimes they had a robber. They played a lot of variations of 2 high, which is sort of what the quarters family does. Cover 4 is the foundation, but they also played cover 2. They played cover 6. Cover 6 is cover 2 to the boundary and cover 4 to the field. Cover 8 is the opposite. It's cover 2 to the wide side and it's cover 4 to the short side. So, they mixed a lot of things up. They rushed 4. They started out almost every play in a 2 safety shell, which I thought they would, because that means they weren't going to get caught up with the no huddle or with any motion.
Greg, I'm kind of curious to see what you think about the Eagles and their creativity offensively.
If I said to you that a quarterback was going to drop back more than 30 times and not throw one ball in the entire game between the numbers, what would you say? He didn't throw one ball between the numbers because they know that that's not his strength. So he did. So it was a brilliantly called game. They play to their strengths exceptionally well. They know exactly what Hurts is, and they know exactly what Hurts isn't. They use the run game elements exceptionally well. I mean, how many times do they throw that little pass in the flat to Goddard and he gets 7, 8+ yards every single time? That works off the run action. It's super hard to defend. There's never anybody out there on the defense. It was just, I thought Kellen Moore was brilliant playing to the strength of the offense. And Hurts, I mean, he made some really good throws outside the numbers. That's what he does at his best. And I thought it was Hurts executed at a really high level within the context of the game plan. And that's all you can ask. You put together the game plan, knowing the strengths and weaknesses of your offensive players, knowing what you anticipate from the defense, and then you hope they execute it, and they execute it at a high level.
A bit. The real question that I want to ask you is your thoughts about that final play that all of the tape watchers are kind of debating on what Josh Allen should have done and what he shouldn't have done. But you're the Godfather, so your opinion is the law. So.
I think you'll be disappointed in my answer because unlike everybody else who talks about it, I don't know everything that was actually called. Everybody else seems to know everything that happened. Unfortunately, I was not in the head of any of the players. So, but here's what happened. So they were in an empty formation, which means they only have 5 blockers, 5 offensive linemen. Okay, the Chiefs had a 6-man front. So that means right now that you can't block all 6. Don't think about the result of the play. Think about now you're at the line of scrimmage. You only have 5 blockers. There's a 6-man front. So you have to account for 6 guys. So that means that the quarterback has to account for one of them. So now you have to decide how you're going to protect that, knowing that one guy, if they rush all 6, you can't account for one guy. Okay? So who's that going to be? Now, to one side was Chris Jones and Nick Bolton. They were on the same side, okay? Bolton, when he's on the line of scrimmage, is very often a part of their pressure schemes, and he was standing right next to Jones on the left side of the offense, the right side of the defense. So they decided to slide their line to that, and that's what they did. Now, I couldn't tell you if somebody made a mistake in protection because obviously they let Justin Reed clean through the B gap. It's one thing to let the corner come in clean. He has distance to go, but they let Reed come in through the B gap. So I couldn't tell you if someone made a mistake. Maybe Spencer Brown, the right tackle, should have squeezed inside and taken Reed in the B gap and left Karlaftis, who was in a pretty wide 9 alignment, and let him alone. I can't speak to that. So it's easy to sit here and say, here's what should have happened, because obviously the defensive end dropped out. So it's, once that, oh, well, he wasn't coming. Well, you don't know that. I mean, there's 6 guys on the line of scrimmage and there's only 5 blockers. So, and by the way, everybody was saying, well, he just should have thrown it to Shakir when he was ready to throw, Shakir was not even close to being ready to catch the ball. So, it's easy after the fact to say, oh, this should have happened. The only thing I would say is I do think, and maybe they were aware of it, it just didn't work out. When you line up in a reduced split, and this is for the Super Bowl as well for the Eagles, if you line up in a reduced split with your boundary X, you got to be aware that Spags could be coming.
How has Spags defense evolved and changed since his time with the Giants?
Well, it's funny because he's always had some great blitz schemes. And now when he was with the Giants, he relied more on four-man pressures because of who he had. Don't forget that 2007, 2011 Super Bowls. I mean, he had great D linemen.
NASCAR, right.
Yeah, but he
NASCAR.
always had great blitz schemes. And he always not always, but one of the things he's done with his blitz pressures is when he rushes 5, he's a master at playing what we call a 4-2 behind it. So it's 4 deep defenders and 2 underneath, but it's not quarters. The rules are different. And I learned that when he was with me for the year he wasn't coaching, and he would come to sit with me pretty much every Monday during the season, and I would keep peppering him with questions. He probably got sick and tired of me, but I kept peppering him with questions, because I'd say, hey, what's this? And he would explain stuff to me. So I would say that he's not blitz heavy in that he constantly blitzes.
Like Greg Williams. Yeah.
Yeah, he's not like, let's just blitz, 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 blitz. But he's so good at understanding protections and breaking them down, showing one thing on one side, forcing an offense to slide to what the look is, then coming from the other side. He's a master at using defensive backs as blitzers. During the regular season, only the Bucs had a higher percentage of defensive backs as blitzers within their blitz schemes. It just seems he's so good situational. It seems the impact is greater.
You mentioned that in passing, obviously, they gave a ton of catches to Ertz. Anything concerning about Ertz getting so many targets for a guy who doesn't move that well? Why did he get open so much?
Well, let's put it this way: they're the way they played Ertz is not going to be the way they play Kelsey, so you can't make that one-to-one thing. They played a lot of man, and there were times they had Blankenship matched on him. Blankenship's not going to play on Kelsey. That's not going to happen in my view anyway. I doubt it. He normally doesn't play the tight end. So I don't think those are one-to-one comparisons. I don't think that's something necessarily where you're going to go into this game and go, oh my God, Ertz caught whatever number of balls he caught.